And so we ended up still being very profitable for our investors and exiting the deal, but we left a ton of money on the table on that one. And in a way, I'm glad it happened because these lessons are etched into your memory so deeply that you'll never make the same mistake again. So since that time, we've been really careful in all our partnerships, and we've still made some partnership mistakes, but never to that level where, this was a multi-million-dollar mistake. We could have personally profited probably $2 to $3 million that we had now that is not in our banks because of this mistake. So these are 7-figure mistakes sometimes, and you want to be very careful. All right, guys, we're back. Part 3, all right? So we're going to get into it. What are the biggest challenges you face while rapidly growing the assets under management, right? And how did you adapt your operations and talents to support larger funds and investments? So, some of the biggest challenges we faced is partnerships. To do big things in life, you need a team, you need a village, and they say, the cliche to get to your dream. That's true, but you also need partners sometimes. And so some of the biggest pitfalls we've had is poor partnerships. And what do I mean by that is we as a company are, let's call ourselves one unit or one partner. We work with other partners on deals. At the beginning is because we couldn't qualify to do the deal on our own. We weren't big enough yet. We didn't have the capabilities or the track record or the experience or the net worth or whatever the reason is, according to the banks. And also there's a fear factor. We were scared. When you finished a $4 million deal and your next deal was a $35 million deal, it's a little bit of cojones there to take that on. You're wondering, man, what if I fail? What if I can't get it done? What happens? I've had anxiety attacks in the last, 8 years since we've been running Viking Capital. And I'll tell you the biggest reason for my anxiety attacks. And I call them attacks because they are paralyzing. I literally can't think of anything else, and I'm worried about this so much, right? And so it's probably happened about 3 times maybe in the last 8 years. And it's always because there's a huge raise or a huge capital requirement to do the deal. And I'm worried that where is Viking Capital going to get the investing amount of money needed to close it? And for all the success and the accolades and whatever we've done, it's still it hurts in my heart. It physically hurts in my heart. I can't breathe fully. I'm trying to work out. I'm trying to meditate. I'm doing breath work. I'm journaling, but it's still freaking scary. And, I don't know, it's despite me trying to be a master of my own mind, and I even freaking coach people on this kind of stuff, it still freaks me out. So the cool thing is becoming less and less, and it's thankfully I've only had, I think, 3 major ones in our last 8 years of existence. So that's a good sign, but it's not fun when I'm going through it. And so I would say that's a huge challenge, right? And the cool thing here is we recently did our biggest raise. We had to raise $50 million of money for a $100 million deal. We're in times of very low leverage. We had to assume the loan. And so that was it. And some of the partners we thought that would come through to help us close that loan didn't come through. In fact, some didn't come through even the last week I was trying to close some of these deals. So can you imagine the stress? But thankfully, we were able to have faith, have courage. I prayed, I believed, and then I also worked my tail off, right, to pull it off. And you have a sense of pride when you're able to do these kind of things. And I don't care what the amount is. Let's say your first raise is like $500,000. That's a lot of money. So to even do that and to pull it off successfully, kudos to you, right? If you remember back to part 1 of my story, my first raise was $500,000 and I didn't think I could do it. I told them I could only commit to $250,000. So that's the evolution that can sometimes happen. So that, I would say, is a challenge, was really a challenge. And it's always going to be a challenge, Bringing capital to a deal will be a challenge just because the control is not on you. You're reaching out to your tribe, your high net worth individuals, family offices, investors, friends and family, people who know, like, and trust you. And, they've been in your circle, and are they ready to get back into the fray with you and do another deal? And there's always going to be a question, but at least if you have a track record and some reps under your belt, you'll have some certainty. Next, again, I talked about partnerships. And so when you get into partnerships, be very careful because it is a marriage. And number 2, maintain operational control. That's one of the things we learned from a partnership where we had lost operational control, or we had given it up, and not given it up in the truest sense. It was essentially we were a 40% chunk voting rights, and the other 2 groups were 30% and 30%. And so technically we had the dominant share. So whenever we voted, it would be trumping the other 2. However, we didn't realize that if the two 30% team up and vote as a block, that 60% would trump our 40%. And that's where all the challenges happened, right? We disagreed on property management companies. We disagreed on the rate of renovations. We disagreed on even the name of the property. And it slowed us down so much that we weren't able to squeeze the juice out of the property and allow it to like sing, if you will. And so we ended up still being very profitable for our investors and exiting the deal, but we left a ton of money on the table on that one. And in a way, I'm glad it happened because these lessons are etched into your memory so deeply that you'll never make the same mistake again. So since that time, we've been really careful in all our partnerships, and we've still made some partnership mistakes, but never to that level where, this was a multi-million-dollar mistake. We could have personally profited probably $2 to $3 million that we had now that is not in our banks because of this mistake. So these are 7-figure mistakes sometimes, and you want to be very careful. Another challenge sometimes is deals, right? How do you keep getting good deals? And one is, the problem is, don't chase deals. Sometimes, I want to do a deal so bad that I'm like so ready. I'm like, let's do it. Come on. We can figure out a way, or we'll do this. But thankfully, our team and our approach is so diligently focused that we have to go through so many checks and balances now that we will never do a bad deal. I know that for a fact because, one, we have a huge team that does our first initial screening, and they screen through 1,500 deals to find maybe 20 to 50 that we're going to look at throughout the year. On top of that, then I have a second round team that then goes and does a fine-tooth analysis. Then my vice president of acquisitions then does a third analysis. Then on top of that, we have something called the investment committee. And as a team, we red team the deal of why the deal is going to fail or why it's not going to work. And if it passes all that muster, it comes on my table, and I'm like, all right. I look at it and I'm like, all right, let's see. Do I feel comfortable with it? Does my gut intuition feel it's okay? Do I feel like this is a good deal for our investors? Is this what they're looking for? And if all of that lines up, then we go after it. So we've built in all these checks and balances. We don't do average deals. We don't do bad deals. In fact, the deals we do are excellent or phenomenal deals. And each iteration we do this, we have a slight improvement, a 1% improvement. That is what's making the difference. See, if I got distracted and, I lost focus, like we did initially in our career where we're looking at all these other things. Thankfully, we ended up doing none of it, but, we wouldn't have had these times. Now we're like Viking Capital 1% better every couple of months. Man, that's the difference between us. Like, we're in a time where there's a lot of economic uncertainty. There are sponsors and syndicators in cities all over the country now that are flailing because of the deals they bought with the variable bridge debt, and they're not able to maintain enough money to even pay their debt. And now the banks and then the lenders are forcing them to sell, almost a short sale, a foreclosure of short sale. This is not happening to us at Viking Capital, thankfully. And I think it's because of the precautions we put in place, the due diligence we put in place, and then the layers of intricacies we put in place in the team. So these are usually solo operators. These are usually not fly by night, but they're like people who really try to just buy high and sell higher, right? That's their mindset versus, hey, let's plan for any contingencies. Let's plan for any uncertainties. So we're actually looking forward to taking advantage of those opportunities now during this market. So I would say partnership, capital, deals, and focus are some of the biggest challenges. How do you align as co-founders? Well, this is really important. There's a book out there I want to recommend called Rocket. Really is talking about the relationship between two typical sort of co-founders or top two leaders of a company. And it's usually the visionary and the integrator, also known as like a CEO, COO, or visionary and 2IC or second in command. You need these two people to stay in communication, in discussions, and make sure they're on the same page. Because as the company grows, you actually don't see that person that often because they're doing their divisions of the company. You're doing your divisions. You're doing your meeting. They're doing their meetings. And sometimes you're not on the same page. And if you're not on the same page, then there's this funny story. Like in our company, when me and Ravi are not on the same page, they say, oh, the two dads are fighting, right? And it's actually true. It's like if we're not in sync, the transparency may not be there. The clarity of message is not there, and we're not in alignment as a company. And if we're not in alignment and not congruent, we can't go as fast. And that there's friction and there's slowdown and inefficiency. And so the better the leadership team and the better the top two leaders, the visionary and integrator, stay in alignment, the faster you can go. So that is super important for you to be successful, whether it's this multifamily company or any company you have. And one of the ways I do that now, and we weren't doing this before, but now we make it a point that every week, and thankfully me and him live close to each other, we meet for 2 hours every week and we sit down and we talk about just life, friends, family, but we also talk about our business and we talk about what are the things we're worried about or what are the things we're excited about, or is there any issues that are coming on the horizon that we need to address together, me and him, before we come as a unified front to our team during our level 10 meetings, referencing traction. That's sort of the technology we use, the operating system we use to run our company. So that alignment is huge, and that releases any tension that naturally happens. This happens with a husband and wife. That's why my wife and I, as life has just gotten so busy, I'm running two separate companies. I have 2 kids that are really active in sports and in school. My wife is a rheumatologist. I have a lot of passions and hobbies, martial arts, workouts, training. We travel a lot. How do we stay, me and my wife, on the same page? We have breakfast dates and we have lunch dates. And these are non-negotiables. We're about 90% accurate in keeping these dates. And really, it's our meetings with ourselves where there's no distractions. Our phones are put away. We look into each other's eyes. We talk, we discuss, we laugh. We sometimes we not argue, but we discuss passionately issues that need to come up and address. And that keeps us together and connected. And similarly, I do that with my business partner, right? In a way, it's a marriage. It's a professional marriage, but it's a marriage nonetheless. Okay. So that is topics about alignment. So the next question is, how do you continue to push boundaries to grow and scale while being financially mindful? Well, if you play defense, your company is never going to grow. So I'm always offensively minded. Now, the ratio depends on the economic cycle. Sometimes I'm 70-30, 70 offense, 30 defense. Sometimes I'm more 60-40 or 50-50 even. During tight times and really concerning periods of our company's growth, it's been man, we just need to stay afloat here because this is crazy stuff going on. We can't find any deals. Our current deals that we have are starting to have some issues. We need to double down on them. And so that's more of a defensive posture. Other times I'm more offense, man. Let's go. I'm like, guys, we've been doing 4 deals a year for the last 3 years. We need to break out. We need to do 8 deals next year. Let's go. And sometimes I push my team hard and it's uncomfortable. Yes. But if I don't do it, we're going to be stagnant. And how does Apple continue to grow typical market share? Because the bigger a company grows, the more inertia there is. This is a medical example, but there's an immune system for every company and every organization. And the immune system attacks new things, right? And it's very robust immune system. It's like attacking invaders. So new ideas, new strategies, new endeavors are sometimes powerfully attacked by the immune system. So there's inertia and there's a feeling of comfort, and you need to break out of that consistently for your company to grow. And so what I do is I constantly read. I read industry information. I read information about multifamily. I read information about the economy. I go to conferences. I listen to economists. I talk to experts in my space or adjoining spaces. I look at similar industries that are not in my industry and try to glean lessons from them. I read biographies of business leaders. I have coaching and mentoring myself. So my mindset is always 10x, 20x, 30x, right? And this eventually gets distilled into my partners, my family, my friends, my companies, my business, my team members, and so forth. So the other thing is I look at competition, and a lot of my quote unquote competition in any industry I'm in are also my friends. It's always friendly competition. I want them to be successful. I want them to push the boundaries of what they're doing because I'm like, oh, if they've done that, then I know I can do that. Or if I've done it, then they know they can do it. So there's no real competition. The real competition I have is with myself and where we are and where we were. And we always are trying to push the boundaries of what's possible. And so another thing I look at is really my end goals. Is it really a number I'm chasing? Is it really an amount, or what are we really chasing? And having that perspective, that broadened, widened perspective, what I'm really chasing is greatness. What I'm really chasing is legacy, it's impact, it's influence. It's not only do I want to be successful, how do I get my team to be successful? How do I get their team members to be successful? How do I get my investors to be successful? How do I get the communities that we invest in to be successful? How do we improve the environment? Whatever we're doing is sustainable and we're having low impact, low carbon impact, but high sustainability. How do we help, the family members of people we're working with? How do we become an example and not a warning? That is now what I'm realizing was driving me. So one of the things I've learned is it's not the mountaintop I'm seeking. I like fun climbs. I like exhilarating climbs. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro last year, and it was really one of the hardest things I ever did. But man, the time I spent on top of that mountain was literally 20 minutes. One, because you're at 19,000 feet. Medically, it's not safe to stay at that altitude because you can develop a lot of pulmonary issues, brain edema, and things like that. So you have to come back down. Number two, most of the time is spent climbing that mountain or going down and getting ready to climb a new mountain, right? So you must enjoy the journey, the climb, the road. And people say that, but it's actually true. Like every time you hit a goal, every time you hit another milestone in your life, an accolade, you get a trophy. How long do you savor it? You enjoy it? A month, a week, a day, an hour? And then you're looking for the next thing. And instead of being like, oh man, you're never satisfied, you're never happy, what is it going to take to make you happy? It's not that. It's called blissful discontentment. It's like, hey, I love it all. I love who it's making me become. I love the journey I'm on. I love the transformation I'm getting and the evolution of what's happening to me, my companies, my team. And it's just fun. I enjoy the process of doing this. I enjoy building things. And so if you can get to that point, it's going to really be a fun ride and a fun journey, whether it's your company, yourself, your team, etc. And so, now that we're getting close to the $1 billion mark, hopefully we can hit it next year. And that's my goal. What's the next stage of growth? We're looking at different things. I love growing. Growing is fun for me. I love educating. I love empowering. I love enlisting people. I love growing more leaders than companies. So that's what we want to do. And really, it's empowering. It's being data-driven. It's strategy. It's mindset. And it's living your best life. I think those are the themes that I have in my mind. And in terms of other asset classes, I have a buddy of mine who's starting to invest in car washes. I find that compelling. I shared the stage with Shaquille O'Neal a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how at one point he was one of the largest owners of car washes in the country. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Why would he do that? Why is that so compelling? And it's really the cash flow that seems to be driving that. Another thing we have now that we have expertise in-house in our company is development. I think there's some opportunities for development there and maybe doing ground up development on multifamily. I think this is the next evolution for us perhaps. And then finally, it's maybe not in Viking, but perhaps with other partners and other things. I'd be interested and curious to learn more about, like I turn apartments around. It'd be interesting to turn businesses around. And maybe this is me just being an advisor, a board member, and a mentor and getting equity in their company and help guiding them, advising them, or perhaps it's actually buying a business and turning it around, And so these are just things I'm contemplating, nothing hard or fast, but you always want to be thinking about what's next so you're prepared as you hit your goal. What's the worst thing in the world that can happen? It's called post-moonwalker syndrome. And Buzz Aldrin, when he went to the moon, it was one of the biggest things any human can do in his lifetime. And very few people in the world have ever done it. When he came back down, the ticker tape parade, he was interviewed on all the major shows and he was in the newspapers and everyone celebrated him. But he ended up becoming an alcoholic. He had drug use, he had other issues. It was because what's next after you go to the moon, right? What's next? And you want to avoid that by always having your next goal ready to go, ready to lined up. So there's not this lull. There's not this like, oh my God, I achieved everything. There's nothing left. And you're just, dwindle down. So I'm always thinking about what's next. And it's not because it's a frenetic way. It's more of a fun way. Hey, what challenge do I get to take on next? And that's how I would frame it. So guys, 3 parts, a lot of information, a lot of talking points. I hope this was helpful. I'm just trying to be honest, be real, and just share with you my journey. Put in the comments below if you enjoyed it. Be happy to do more of these. But man, I'm just wishing you tremendous success about you. I want you to be successful. You inspire me as much as I inspire you, hopefully. And just keep doing what you want to do. Keep finding your zone of genius and doubling down and just focusing. And don't get distracted like I've been in my life, and just really focus. And the moment I decided to focus, man, the whole world opened up to me. So until next time, guys, be phenomenal, and I'll catch you guys later. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe or a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.